You thought Branded was dead. Well, guess again. How's it going, YouTube? Welcome back to another video on the channel. And today, with this new format and this former Forbidden and Limited list that got Gimmick Puppet Nightmare hit on the ban list, we're back with Branded. I know you've all been waiting for this deck, and I think after a lot of exploration, a lot of research, a lot of testing, this is one of the best ways to play Branded. You know that this channel will always be there for you when it comes to Branded. And hey, Branded is even topping regionals right now. So, you know, the deck is definitely far from dead. There's going to be a lot of spicy things here that you probably have never seen before. You already saw a glimpse of the Doll Fusion, which I think is really, really great this format. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how to play this deck and why every single card is here. Before we begin, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're looking to upgrade your collection, make sure to check out tierzerogames.com using galzo 5 for 5% off, getting all of my cards from there consistently. So make sure you do that as well. So, a few thoughts about Branded to begin with. Branded is having a hard time mainly because of how other decks are currently being built, right? The fact that cards like Shifter and Ominous Impulse are very, very strong in this format make it very hard to play Branded. Now, in YCS Bologna, when I attended, there were some games that I won, or even matches, where I never resolved Branded Fusion. The only thing you need to do is to know this deck in and out, and this means practicing it a lot. This is one of the more complicated decks, but it is the most rewarding in terms of skill level. So it takes a very good pilot to bring this deck to the maximum, and I think that you could win, but you have to put in the time, and this is why we have so many videos here on the channel, the Branded Academy playlist, and other great videos on how to actually pilot Branded, some gameplay reviews, so go ahead and check that out. And if you want to really dive into it, our Discord channel, our Discord server is completely free and filled with people who love Branded just as much as you do. Let's start off with the list, 51 cards in the main deck. We're playing 3, Fallen Valbaz. Honestly, this doesn't change, and I think this is also one of the better outs to the strongest boards of the format. If you look at Detonator, if you manage to negate it, or just the Cyber's Link 5, the Terahertz, usually in the Malice end board, normal summon Albaz could actually be a winning play because there's not going to be a lot of monster negates on that board, usually. 3 Aliber because we still are looking for that consistency, and there's a lot of cards that we can search in this deck, and then 2 Cartesia and 2 Quem. This is going to be your main monster engine, and we are not playing Gimmick Puppet Nightmare, obviously, but we're also not playing any substitute, and we're not even playing Albion, the Sanctifier Dragon. So this is your level 4 lineup, obviously the best monsters in your deck, and then we're still playing Albion, the Shrouded Dragon at 3, just because this card is one of the best, and this is what allows you to push through interruptions and play from the graveyard. Basically, this card plus High Spirits plus Bestials is what really gets the deck going. This is honestly, you know, we didn't always play this at 3, but I think now it is more crucial than ever. Now, Fiendsmith is a big deal right now, so we are playing 2 of these Bestials, 1 Lubellion, 1 Magnemite, and Lubellion is going to be super important in this deck. And then we are also playing 3 Saronir. Again, similar to Albion the Shrouded Dragon, this card allows you to play very, very differently than what your opponent would expect. You can bait out a lot of interruptions, and this synergizes really well with your Branded in High Spirits, which is basically 2-card combo that is a full combo with follow-up and doesn't really lose to any interruption. We play more Bestials just because of the Fiendsmiths, basically. Now the standalones are going to be Tragedy, they're going to be Mercurier, Kit, and then even though it's a 51 card build, I am playing Tearlaments Chiron, and I will explain why I think this card is so good. Of course, in conjunction with Bestial Saronir, combined with Saronir in the hand, which you will see a lot of the times because you played a 3, this card becomes a searcher, possibly, because sending Saronir, milling 3, usually you would hit a Branded spell or trap that you can bring back to the hand with Saronir because it sends Retribution. Now, the other thing is that we are relying heavily on Masquerade, the Blazing Dragon in this deck, and we want to put this out really early. Sheeran allows you to do that really, really easily, because every time you fuse with Sheeran, using Sheeran for Grand Guignol with Cartesia, for example, using Sheeran with Branded Fusion, Sheeran gives you another fusion with the Despia, into Masquerade. So every time you fuse with Chiron, it's essentially 2 fusions in the price of 1. So I think this is great to just add a Masquerade on the board. And why do we care about Masquerade so much? Mainly because of the Malice matchup, where every cost will be added 600 as well. So they will have to pay 600 to summon their smaller monsters, and they will have to pay 1500 to summon their link monsters, which makes it really hard for them to grind into turn 3, and you definitely can do that much more easily. And again, for that Masquerade, we are also playing the Fright for Patchwork engine, which is going to be 2 Edge Imp, 2 Patchwork, and 1 Polymerization. We're playing Magnum the Reliever, which you will see next, and it allows you to recycle that 1 Polymerization, which is fine. 1 Branded Fusion, obviously, it is all you need. You don't need to resolve this card to win whatsoever. It is very hard to play against an Ash and a Dominus Impulse. Thankfully, Ryzeal and Fiendsmith decks don't play Dominus Impulse. Fire King is essentially very hurt, so the only thing you need to worry about is your Malice matchup, and that is why we lean so heavily into cards like Masquerade and Board Breakers, basically. So obviously 1 Branded Fusion. We're playing 3 Opening, which is of course a no-brainer, 3 Deployment, the honorary spells of this deck. Obviously the greatest starters. Opening is going to be really important for you as well to protect from Detonator, so don't forget that you can do that. And then 3 High Spirits. We want to be able to use a lot of Bestials in our hands to fight off the Fiendsmith engines and then capitalize them going first with Branded and High Spirits, which again sets up a dragon in your graveyard, sets up Serenir, Searcher's Albion, the Shroud of Dragon, which is basically just Branded Fusion on its own, sets up Graveyard Interruption, sends up the end phase play, and that is just using 2 cards from your hand, which is just incredible advantage. So this card is obviously really good. You can obviously side it out going second. It is very recommended to do that. And then we're playing 1 in red, 1 lost, and then Branded Regained, even though we're playing 50. Why are we playing Branded Regained? And why is this card so incredibly important? Mainly, it's the Malice matchup. You want this card on the field before Branded Lost in the Malice matchup. You don't really care about fusing. You don't even care about Mirror Jade. But what you really care about is that once your opponent banishes one of their Malice monsters and tries to bring it back, you can shuffle it into their deck and draw 1 card with Regain. So every single turn, you get an additional interruption and a draw with this card. Since their engine is activated in the banish zone, in the banishment, it's so high value to have this card on the board. So it basically wins you the Malice matchup on its own. We have 3 Thrust here. Nothing really changes there. I think a lot of people are going to be playing hand traps. Shifter is still around in some decks. Malice play a lot of hand traps. You need this to get to your fusion engines. And then 3 Eclipse as the probably the most impactful non-engine of this format right now. Going first is great against Malice, obviously. Deals with the Fiendsmith, Kashira, and Ryzeal boards, which you will encounter, and they're not so easy to play through. And then 1 Sark, 1 Talents, 1 Call by the Grave, and then Fusion Duplication and Branded Retribution. This is going to be the main deck, 51 cards. A lot of deep thought and strategy went into this, and you can see that it is very well thought out for the current meta. Extra deck is going to be kind of straightforward. Actually, not that straightforward, to be honest. 2 Mirror Jade, 2 Albion, and then 1 Lubellion. Basically the same lineup, Titaniclad and Rindbrum. These are the Albaz fusions. We're not playing Albion the Sanctifier Dragon because we're not playing any target for it, and it's not that good. Playing something a little bit better. 1 Granguignol, again, you don't need a lot when you're not doing the puppet lock. You just need the 1. You can recycle it as well. 1 Masquerade, which is obviously so good and impactful versus Malice, really just puts a strong wrench in their strategy just because every cost is going to become 600 more life points to play. And eventually, you will win the grind game because you will not be able to summon any more monsters. This card is incredible pressure. Queritus is also good because it makes their Link monsters attacks 0. And then we are also playing Queritus. Now, Queritus, you can bring it out with Grandiol. You can bring these out as well. Why is this so good? Because there are really good stuff to pick up from your opponent's graveyard right now. And there are 2 main things. 1, you can steal their Link monsters if you're playing against Malice, right? You can steal their Link monsters, activate their effects if they have Cryptor, for example. It doesn't really do anything specifically because you don't have any Malice cards in your graveyard. But White Binder, for example, getting rid of some of their things in the graveyard. But mostly, this card can summon the opponent's detonator onto your field, and then you can actually attach a monster from your graveyard to that detonator. Essentially, you get a pop and you get rid of one copy of their boss monster. So Perskinian is great. Magnum the Reliever, another great form of removal. I think destruction and removal is super important, especially chainable. Lots of field spells, lots of continuous cards, lots of equipping to fiend monsters. This card being reactive and be able to pop and draw more advantage cards is just really good. We are playing Super Polymerization, but Dragos Tepelia again is just like good targeted negation, especially against Kashtiras. Guardian Chimera, another great form of removal. And then at the end, Light and Darkness Dragonlord, because it's still one of your best lines under Shifter. Basically, if you open Albion, Shrouded Dragon plus High Spirits, or if you open Albur plus Fusion Deployment, you get to a full setup of this and Rinbrum on the field together, which means Bounce and 3 Omni Negates, which is very, very strong against most of the meta decks today. So, extra deck, 15 cards, obviously. Now, the real spice is in the side deck, of course, as always. Shaddoll package. Let's talk about why we play 3 Shaddoll Fusion. We are playing 1 Aerial, we're playing 1 Beast, and then we are also playing 1 El Shaddoll App Cologne. So this basically breaks a lot of the boards on its own. If you just activate Shaddoll Fusion, and of course you have Triple Tactics Thrust to access it more easily. Now, what happens is that you will activate Shaddoll Fusion. Let's say you're playing into a Malice board, for example. You will go into Shaddoll Fusion, summon the App Cologne, and then this is actually supposed to be a dragon, not a beast. It's in my binder, but yeah, it's a dragon. So basically Shaddoll Dragon and Shaddoll Aerial means that you get a negate for a card on the field. When it's summoned, you can negate a card on the field permanently, right? Any face-up card. And then Shaddoll Dragon can pop a card and Aerial can access the graveyard and basically just chain block. So if you're going into a Malice board, you can pop the field spell, negate the detonator no matter what, right? And then they kind of have to give up something in that line of chain, and of course Aerial can banish. Same thing goes for the Malice board, the Fiendsmith Kashira board. It's just one card trading into 3 different things. Aerial can banish all your opponent's Fiendsmith cards from the graveyard, which is really strong because this is their only way to play afterwards. So this is basically why we play the Shaddoll package. Then we are playing, as we said, Super Polymerization. Incredible card, right? Becomes a little bit more situational this format, just because Ryziel is not really super polyable, I would assume. But we have a way, like Malice is not, I think, your biggest threat, just because they're not playing Impulse right now. So you have much more options to break their board and play into it. But then we are playing this card, World Chalice Guard Dragon Elmar Duke, which is a wind dragon monster, 3000 attack, 2600 defense. It requires 3 link monsters to fusion summon, right? And can attack every monster your opponent controls once each. So, essentially, your opponent starts off with their Malice end board of a big link 5 monster in the extra monster zone, but then, in order to continue playing, they will have to summon 2 additional link monsters. Specifically, they usually will summon White Binder and Red Ransom from the graveyard, which means that their board is now super polyable into this. This can clear out 2 of their small Malice monsters that are usually going to be on the board, or any Bestial remaining. It just clears up the entire board, and then you are free to attack for a game with the rest of your other branded monsters. This card is really good, and of course with Dragos Tepelia and Mirror Jade you can just break boards with Super Polymerization. And then lastly we have the Gizmic Uka package. I will explain a little bit about how this works. I was kind of against this package specifically in Yubel format because usually they will start off with getting Phantom of Yubel onto the board as quickly as possible. Now, it's a little bit different because if we're talking about Fiendsmith Ryziel specifically, or Kashira Fiendsmith, now this becomes a little bit better. So, what do you actually do with this package? Gizmic Uka, the Festive Fox of Fecundity. If you don't know what it does, if your opponent special summons from the main deck, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. So, Requiem effect, summon either Lacrima or Fiendsmith Engraver, and you summon this. Now, on summon, you can target any face-up monster your opponent controls, then you get to special summon 1 monster from your hand or deck, whose attack equals its own defense with the same attribute. So, against Fiendsmith cards, essentially what this does, and this could also work against Ryziel if they start with Ice and summon X from the deck. It works exactly the same way, right? So, you summon this, you target one of their light monsters, and then you summon from your deck or hand Incredible Ecclesia the Virtuous, which is the light monster with the same attack and defense. Now we are in turn 0. Our opponent just started playing. You activate the effect of Ecclesia, which can summon Fallen Valbets from the deck, and you can take out another one of their cards using a fusion summon. Then you can fuse into a Mirror Jade and get rid of another card and start your turn with Albion the Branded Dragon in the graveyard. This package of this format, I think, is much better than it was in Yubel format. I was very against it. You all saw the videos probably, but this time, I mean, against Ryziel, summoning X from deck, against Fiendsmith cards, you start off with a Mirror Jade on the board, your turn, which is crazy. Lastly, 1D barrier for the thrust, gets rid of the Ryziel. And yeah, this has been my Crossover Breakers format breakdown of the Branded deck. Is the deck dead? Absolutely not. I think Fire King was actually the biggest threat to Branded, and now, honestly, you can play kind of freely. One main thing is that I didn't include Nadir Servant. I really don't see Nadir Servant as something that is extremely valuable. You will encounter a lot of hand traps, and Nadir Servant definitely helps with that, but it doesn't really progress your end board specifically, and especially if you already normal summon, and I think it requires a lot of commitment from the extra deck that here, in this deck, for example, we're playing cards like Patchwork, and we're playing Sheeran, which lets you fuse and keep playing even through interruptions. Let me know what you think about this build. Will you be playing this in locals during your next time and the next time you visit locals? Thank you so much for watching this video. Like the video, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.